Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2024 Butterfield Bermuda DFS Tactics show. We have a lot to cover. We've got the forecast to look at, got ownership projections to check out and see who we might want to fade and who we want to gravitate toward. Per usual, I've got my rankings, got all the info you need to finalize everything for the Butterfield Bermuda this week. Let's get into it. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from FantasyNational.com. It is the best golf analytic tool out there for your money. Go check out Fantasy National Golf Club. You will not regret it. In the description of the video, there are links to all of the social media. First off, my X and Instagram, where earlier this week I posted some research around previous winners of the Butterfield Bermuda, some patterns that they all shared, and players in the field who also fit those patterns. So if you want to see the weekly research that I do on the PGA Tour, give me a follow at your preferred social media site. X is also where I place my weekly betting cards and top player usage in the DFS contest I play. That comes out every Wednesday evening, so that'll be out later this evening after the DFS Tactics show. So if you want to see those pieces of info, give me a follow over at X. Finally, for social media, Gabe's handle is in the description. He writes a great article called The Fringe. It's a free article. Really are missing out if you aren't subscribed to it. And if you are, you're going to be able to join us in his Substack chat every Wednesday evening after the DFS Tactics show as we continue the DFS talk over there. It's very informative, very entertaining. You really are missing out. And be on the lookout as we are going to start putting some content together, I think probably next week, but really going to start doing that in 2025. So make sure you are subscribed to his article and go show him some support. Follow him over on social media. Lastly, we are live. Chat is open. I want to hear from you all. In addition to the poll question, which I'll post momentarily, who's your winner? Who are you gravitating toward? Are you as keen on the forecast as I am? And do you see it the same way? So feel free to jump in chat. Would love to hear from everyone in the community this evening. And of course, if you aren't able to watch live, drop a comment. I'll make sure to get to those as well. So let's get into it. Let's figure out our strategies and our tactics for the 2024 Butterfield Bermuda Championship. And we start, as we always do, on a Wednesday evening, as soon as my chair cooperates. We start at the Super Forecast over at Windfinder. And I'm going to be honest with you, I am not entirely confident that this is what it's going to be like tomorrow. I've heard several other sources say that tomorrow's going to be very, very windy and then it tapers off Friday. So we'll see. All I can go by is what Windfinder is showing at the moment. And it shows that it's going to be pretty windy tomorrow, but clearly a lull on Thursday or in Thursday afternoon. And before I get too much further, let me go ahead and post the poll question for the evening, which is based around this forecast. Did the forecast push you toward or away from using, any players or groups of players in your lineups? Essentially, are you going to play a wave advantage? Were you really high on somebody that maybe isn't the best in the wind, or were you not considering somebody, but knowing that there's a lot of wind in the forecast, maybe you are considering them? So did the forecast play a part in your decision making this week? But coming back to that forecast, again, all I can go by is what it says on the Super Forecast here at Windfinder. Looks like there's a little bit of a lull tomorrow afternoon. Friday, nobody gets a break, apparently. Sustained winds into the 20s. Chilly, high in the mid-50s. Looks horrible. And then I think there's supposed to be some rain coming in Friday night into Saturday morning, as you can see there. But players are going to be dealing with wind all weekend, with the exception of seemingly, which is really weird. Look at this, Thursday. So if we go to the Super Forecast, this is really strange. Thursday is calm and Friday is not. That's why I'm a little thrown off, because if you zoom out, It looks like they have the Thursday and the Friday mixed up on the super forecast. That's what it looks like. But anyway, everything that I have heard and seen seems to point to a Thursday p.m., Friday a.m. favor because of this lull in the winds that is supposedly going to happen. Whether that happens Thursday p.m. or Friday a.m., either way, it seems like that half of the draw is going to get the best of it, or at least some amount of break in the winds. Because every time, or every other time this week and weekend, looks like the players are going to be dealing with sustained winds into the 20s, temperatures in the mid to upper 50s. Looks like it's going to be a pretty rough tournament for the players down in Bermuda. So with that, we're going to move to Fantasy National, and I have here in the last 50 rounds in moderate and windy conditions, your top performers in the wind the past 50 rounds have been Daniel Berger, Brendan Todd, Andrew Novak, Patrick Rogers, Mark Hubbard, Ben Griffin, Nate Lashley, Andrew Putnam, Sam Stevens, and Scott Piercy. Now, having said that, be advised, we just talked about how the Thursday p.m., Friday a.m. seems to have the better half of the draw. Look at the tee times of most of these players. They are Thursday morning. So you'll want to take that into consideration. Yes, they might be, some of the best in the wind in this field, but wind is just difficult to play no matter who you are. So I'm a little worried about a lot of these players, even though their wind performance is strong, just due to the fact that it seems like the Thursday p.m., Friday a.m. has a pretty clear advantage. But anyway, there's your top performers and players in the wind in the past 50 rounds. Players who have not been very good. Let's try to get some notable names here. Carl Yuan, Zach Blair, Kisner, Snedeker. Russell Knox has not been very good in the wind. Matthew Neesmith, Matty Schmid has been pretty darn bad in the wind. It's mainly in this moderate category. As you can see, actually been okay in the windiest of windy. Camilo Villegas, Will Gordon, Echeverria, Wesley Bryan. So there's some of the players who haven't been nearly as good in the wind. The only other thing that I'm going to take a real quick look at, let's take a look at some Bermuda putting. I'm not going to go all the way to Tiff Eagle or narrow it down all the way to Tiff Eagle. I'm just going to look at Bermuda because I realized we didn't really do that this week. We looked kind of under the microscope on Tiff Eagle. But if we want to just look at slow Bermuda greens, slow and average, I suppose. Your top putters on slow and average speed Bermuda greens the past couple of years: Ben Griffin, Ryo Hitsatsune, Chad Ramey, Carl Yuan, Troy Merritt, Troy Merritt, Kelly Craft, Mav McNeely, Justin Suh, Mackenzie Hughes, and ADDC, Adrian Dumont Deschasart. Again, skipping Taylor Montgomery, he has withdrawn. I have not seen any new field changes, so just make sure Taylor Montgomery and Joe Highsmith are out of your lineups, as they are not playing this week. But we've got quite a bit to cover. I want to talk a little bit about the mixed condition model, so let's go ahead and get right into it. The mixed condition model that I have made for this week for Port Royal and the Butterfield Bermuda. We're going to start with strokes gained approach, 15%. Throughout most of Tuesday and early today, I had this at 10%. But with that wind forecast and players not really all that worried about being in the rough generally speaking, here at this course. I decided to up it to 15% because there are two really key shots that matter here. Approach and putting. That's the two main shot types, but it's really, really emphasized and exaggerated here. So 15% in approach, and that time frame of the last 2 months, going back to the Pro Core. So in the immediacy, who's been the best with their irons? You'll notice that I'm not looking at any specific putting other than just since the Pro Core. If you'll recall back to Monday night, I showed you, the previous winners that they had been in really, really good recent putting form. Maybe not necessarily on Tiff Eagle Bermuda, but just good putting form in general. Bent, Bermuda, POA, didn't matter. Paspalum even. So 15%, this might be a little bit heavy, but 15% in putting in the past 2 months since the Pro Core, just like approach. So I just want to see who is coming to Port Royal with an extremely hot putter. 15% in good drives gained on short courses. I don't think this is going to be easy considering the forecast. So that's why I went to the short course filter. But I am pretty confident that good drives gained is the metric we want to look at in that page view between distance and greens and fairways and whatnot. Good drives gained. I just want to see players who are, hitting their fairways, or they're generally good enough to still hit greens from the rough. So 15% there. 10% birdies or better gained on short courses. Again, I would have liked to have used the scoring filter, but I don't think this is going to be easy this week. So 10% birdies or better gained on short courses. And then we finalized the mixed condition model out with some specifics, really, really emphasizing these par fours. We saw Monday night when we took a deep dive into Port Royal just how important these two links of par fours are across the course, and especially in the par fours, considering there's only one par four over 450. So 20% in the short par fours, 15% in the mid-length par fours, 5% each on the very long par threes and the short par fives. Again, this is all predicated on the deep statistical dive that we did Monday night in the Data Dive show. So there's a look at the mixed condition model that I have made for the week. With that, we'll move to Microsoft Excel and the reveal of my rankings. Now, a reminder to those of you who are returning viewers, for your information if you're a new viewer, my rankings are only based on 3 criteria. The FNGC rank, which is the numerical ranking that Fantasy National gives a player based on the mixed condition model that we just covered. All the metrics and percentages that we put in there. Course value is the player's performance at that course in the past 5 years. Fortunately for us, Port Royal's been seen 5 years, so this is the entirety of the tournament. The lower the number, the better. Justin Lowers played well here. Putnam's played well here. Seamus Power has played very well here. So the lower the number, the better. This is a player's performance specifically at that course. And then we are playing DFS. We are trying to find unique options. So percent owned or projected ownership, these are per Fantasy National. Those are also factored into my rankings. Normally, I do not factor in, or I should say I don't factor in tee time and wave advantage into my rankings inherently. That's why you see this column here, and we did this for the Shriners when there was a very clear advantage. We're doing the same this week and highlighting the players who have the good draw and those with the bad. But I don't inherently put in wave advantages into my rankings. As you can see, somebody with a poor wave advantage, or on the bad half of the draw, is my number one player. So speaking of that, My rankings go as such. Justin Lauer, coming off his runner-up finish last week, is my number 1 player. Andrew Putnam, Matty Schmid, Mark Hubbard, and Ben Griffin round out my top 5. Doug Gim, Lucas Glover, Kevin Yu, Roger Sloan, 6,800, Roger Sloan, and Zach Blair round out my top 10. Well, let's just go ahead and talk about the 6,800 player that is, rose to 9th in my rankings. He is getting helped quite a bit by the fact that he is very, very unique. Not very many people, at least, according to Fantasy National, are coming down to the 6Ks or to Roger Sloan. But he's also played pretty well here. His irons haven't been fantastic this fall. That's fine. He's been pretty good with the putter. But what he really does is he takes advantage of these shorter courses, these shorter holes, because he's not very long off the tee. Top 15, and birdies are better on short courses. 3rd in the par 4s, 400, 450 across all of 2024, at least in this field. So, relative to this field, Roger Sloan looks like he provides quite a bit of opportunity here, especially considering his uniqueness. I'm okay with him being fairly high. I don't know if I'd have him, truly in my top 10, but he's also got the good half of the draw, very unique. So, foreshadowing a little bit, you can probably guess who my Mad Scientist Player of the Week is, but, we'll talk about him as we go through the price board. One player I really want to highlight, though, is Zach Blair. I am nowhere near Zach Blair, despite the fact that he has the good half of the draw. He's not been good here at Port Royal, and again, hearkening back to Monday night and that deep statistical dive, the former champions here at Port Royal have never missed a cut. Zach Blair's not been good here. I can't say he's never missed a cut. I actually don't know off the top of my head. We can check that very quickly. Let's do that. Zach Blair. Vision skewed, I know. I apologize. But if we take a look at his performance at Bermuda, he's played once. He made the cut 57th. I was trying to get that up there for you all. You'll just have to take my word for it. He's played it once. He made the cut. I'm not there with Zach Blair, especially because his biggest skill set, his putter, has not been very good in the fall. Hey, good evening, Pete. Thanks for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. Hopefully you have had a pretty good time. It's been a little while since I've seen you. Ready for the penultimate event on the PGA Tour, or at least in terms of DFS and whatnot for the PGA Tour. It's good to see you this evening. How do you feel about Port Royal? Who's some of your guys that you're going after or maybe staying away from? But good to see you this evening. Thanks for jumping in chat. So because of Blair's trouble with the putter, the fact that these long par 3s and these short par 5s where you can make up some ground, or at least hold on for dear life on these long par 3s, but really make up some ground on players on these short par 5s, he's not very good at those. So I'm not there with Zach Blair, even though he reached the top 10 numerically. Otherwise, probably not a whole lot of surprise here in terms of who is and isn't up here. But as I was alluding to when we talked about win performance, a lot of these guys have the bad half of the draw. I mean, 4th through 8th, those 5 players, and my number 1 player is on the bad half of the draw. So we've got some work to do to try to find some players that we might feel comfortable filling out our lineups. So let's go ahead and sort on the price board, figure out where Fantasy National or members at Fantasy National seem to be gravitating toward, and then we will go and see who some of the pivots are we might want off of them. So in the 5 digits, in the 10Ks, we only have 2 players, Seamus Power and Mackenzie Hughes. Seamus Power has been very, very good here. Of course, former champion in 2022. Mackenzie Hughes has never played here, but this does feel like a pretty good Mackenzie Hughes fit. All about, short game, putting, shorter par fours. Yes, his 350 to 400 hasn't been very good, but his 400 to 450 is really solid. So I do like Mackenzie Hughes. No surprise that I'm going to like Seamus Power. I mean, he's probably the second or third most projected owned player. I'm going to use Seamus Power a lot. It's chalk I'll eat. I'm just confident that he's going to play well. So I'll make Power first in the 10Ks. I'll make Mackenzie Hughes second, but I'm definitely going to use both of these players. Absolutely. I'm not shying away from either of them, especially because they both have the good half of the draw. So not a whole lot to dissect there. Moving into the nines. This is where things start to get interesting because a lot of these players, even though they rated out well, 4 of these in my top 10, most of these players have the bad half of the draw. They are teeing off early tomorrow and then have some horrendous wind Friday afternoon. Mav McNeely has the good half of the draw. I cannot get there with Mav McNeely. Guy always seems to withdraw every time I back him or doesn't play well. He's been okay here in multiple tries, but the putter hasn't been good in the fall. He's been really bad at hitting greens from the rough or just finding fairways in general. So Matt McNeely is one that I am staying away from, despite him having the good half of the draw. Now the rest of these 4, I am going to have a little bit. I'll even use a little bit of Patrick Rogers because he's been so good here. But I am very, very wary of especially these 5. I'm not playing Sam Stevens. I'm wary of these 5. Now, despite Justin Lauer being number 1 in my rankings, I'm going to limit my use of him. But he's probably the one I'm going to go to the most just because he's been so good here. He's in very, very good form coming off that runner-up. 10th in putting in this field during the fall. First in 400 to 450 par 4. So of these 5, I would go to Justin Lauer the most. Ben Griffin is the most projected owned player. 25% is really, really heavy. Don't get me wrong. I'm going to have a very little bit of Ben Griffin because he's been so good here. 43rd is actually his worst statistic in this field. I mean, he is one of the more premier players in this field. Just scared off with that tee time, despite the fact that he is very good in the wind. That's what's saving him a little bit. I have a lot of concerns with Doug Gim. Again, mostly around the putter. He's actually not been the greatest here either. And he's always going to garner a lot of attention in these weaker fields. So this is a pretty easy fade for me. Just, again, because of the putter. He hadn't been good here. I'm actually not going to use any Lucas Glover at all. Much like Doug Gim, he has been really bad here. And his putter is actually in form as opposed to Doug Gim's. But I can't get there with Lucas Glover. Again, I'm putting a little bit extra weight into prior course performance this week. And Doug Gim's generally not been good here. He does have 1 top 15 and 3 miscuts. So I'm gonna take the majority there. I think he's probably going to struggle this week. Bad putter on a course that demands good putting in the wind. No thanks. Much like Mav McNeely, another player that has the good half of the draw that I'm just not all that keen on is Matty Schmid. Maybe it's the recency bias of last week when I backed him a little bit and he imploded. But everything analytically says that Matty Schmid should be pretty good. He's even played well here in the past. This is more of a gut feeling. And mainly because he is so bad in the wind. So that is that is where I'm at with Matty Schmid. I might try to squeeze him once into a lineup, but I don't feel great about it. This is one of my bolder plays or non-plays of the week. If Matty Schmid plays well, I'm going to lose because I've got some concerns. But in the 9Ks, and surprisingly, at least to me, he's one of the more unique options in the 9Ks, at least according to Fantasy National. I love Andrew Putnam this week. So foreshadowing the betting card, foreshadowing, most used players. Love Andrew Putnam this week. Short, precision golf course, demands good putting. He's actually a better putter than what he's shown in the fall. He's second in the 400 to 450 par fours. There's a lot to like with Andrew Putnam, and so I'm going to be using a whole lot of Andrew Putnam. So yeah, in the 9Ks, I'll dabble Ben Griffin. I might have Doug Gim once. I will have some Justin Lowry. He is the number one player in my rankings. He's played very well here, but I do not like that tee time, obviously. And I'm going to use a whole lot of Andrew Putnam. Much like Bo Hostler last week, he's the pivot. And good half of the draw, shapes up well for him. He's played well here. I think this is another Bo Hostler situation where you're going to get a lot of leverage on your opponents if you're willing to go to Andrew Putnam. I highly suggest you do. All right. Moving to the 8s. A lot of people are gravitating to Daniel Berger, and I understand why. He's in great form right now. But he has not been... I mean, this is accounting all 2024, so, he's in great form recently. But even so, the irons haven't been great in the past couple of months. He's been putting okay. Like I said, I'll have some Daniel Berger, but this is just a whole lot of ownership to swallow on a Daniel Berger that's still working his way back from injury. So I don't know. I'm just not there. I'll use it a little bit because he has the good half of the draw. Because you can see elsewhere in the 8Ks, they all have the bad half of the draw, but not necessarily there with Daniel Berger. I wanted to like Andrew Novak. Gosh dang it. I wanted to like Andrew Novak. Bad half of the draw. Vegas hasn't actually been very good here, and that was one of the few things, one of the things I got right last week. I was out on Vegas at the Worldwide Technologies and all that ownership, and he did make the cut. Seems like Fantasy National has adjusted, at least members of Fantasy National, because they're not using Vegas despite him having the good half of the draw. But I still don't want any part of Johnny Vegas. I would be wary of Brendan Todd this week. He didn't rate out well, and he has the bad half of the draw. I would want to like Mark Hubbard, bad half of the draw. I'll probably squeeze him in a lineup or two. Kevin Yu, much the same. Both of these players have been very good here, very good in the wind. I'm just concerned about their tee time. And Jacob Bridgman has been very good lately, but again, bad half of the draw. So I'm not really in the 8Ks all that much, which might surprise you, but I'm not in here, which means I'm not kind of building those lineups. So you can probably guess what kind of lineups I'm building. Moving into the upper 7s, Alex Smalley, again, has played very well here, but bad half of the draw and a terrible putter, much like Doug Gim. I might have him once, but it's dicey. Rico Hoey should be fine. It's going to be popular. It's fine. It's a good half of the draw. I want to point you to Carson Young. Despite the fact that he has, been very bad here, really only once, but he missed the cut. Number 1 in good drives gained. Good putter, or decent enough putter. Very good on these shorter par 4s and great in the wind. Good half of the tee time, or good half of the draw. I really like Carson Young. But much like the 8s, the upper 7s, I'm not really all that excited to be in here, except for maybe Carson Young. I'll squeeze a Smalley in the lineup. I'll have a little bit of Rico Hoey. Sig's fine too. Bad half of the draw, sure, but Sig's probably fine. Just very popular. Instead, moving into the mids and low sevens, I want to highlight Ryo Hitsatsune. He has not played here before. Pretty darn unique. Sub 8% ownership. And think about Japan. And, he kind of made his hay at the Zozo and also at Waialae. He played very well at Waialae. What are those courses? They are short. They, at least Waialae is coastal, much like Bermuda. They are positional golf courses where you have to really make sure you're in the right spot, even if you're in the rough, so long as you're on the right, or in the correct spot in the rough, correct side of the fairway, if you will. This seems like a very, very good fit for Ryo Hitsatsune. So, much like I said with Matty Schmidt, if he plays well, I'll lose. If Hitsatsune does not play well, I will lose. I'm going to be extremely overweight on Ryo Hitsatsune. Top 10 in irons in this field in the fall. Top 30 putting. Takes advantage of shorter par 4s. His one weakness is long par 3s, so he'll have to be a little bit better with that. But I do think Ryo Hitsatsune is going to be very, very good this week. Wesley Bryan's fine. He was my bold, suggestion or mad scientist play last week. He played very, very well. So he's gotten the price bump. It's fine. Not in love with it, but it's fine. All week, I have targeted Chesson Hadley. And then the tee time or the draws comes out and he's in the bad half. Which I hate. I'm still going to play quite a bit of Chesson Hadley. But I would, be very concerned. I'm quite concerned about it. Considering he didn't rate out the best anyway. It's just the fact that he has played so darn well here. He is unique. Top 20 putter. The irons are a little bit better than this. He's also very good on the long par 3s. I want to like Hadley a lot, but I'm going to temper my usage of him because of this tee time. Instead, in the lower sevens, I've been gravitating towards Pearson Coody and David Lipsky. And despite the fact that David Lipsky really isn't that great of a putter, look at his putting form in the fall. He is 7th in this field in putting. He is carrying an extremely hot putter into the Bermuda. So really pay attention to David Lipsky. Those are the two big, unique plays I think I have for you all this week, other than, going into the 6Ks, is Ryo Hitsatsune, who I'm very, very confident in. And I think David Lipsky is going to be pretty good. I'm much more confident in Ryo Hitsatsune if you're trying to decide between the two. But I like them both. So I'm going to use David Lipsky. I'll also use some Pearson Coody. Coody rated out just a little bit better because Lipsky has not been very good here and Coody's just never played here. Coody's also a little bit more unique. But I like both of these. I like Hitsatsune. I'm in the lower sevens quite a bit. I talked about Zach Blair. I'm not there with him, despite him being top 10 in my rankings. The only other maybe 7K I want to give a slight nod to is Scott Piercy. Bad tee time, but great in the wind. One of the better wind performers there are. When you think of certain courses and certain styles, like short positional courses, you should think Webb Simpson, Kevin Kisner, and all that. When you hear wind, you should probably think Scott Piercy. He is very, very good in the wind. So that's why I want to give you that, at least note him for you. Because I'm going to throw him in a lineup because of his prowess in the wind. There isn't a lot else going for him, as you can see. He's been okay here, not great. The irons are fine. Putter's been bad. Bad on the short par 4s. Not a lot to go with except for the fact that he is generally pretty good in the wind. And then in the 6Ks, like Fantasy National, members of Fantasy National are not coming down here at all. Like 4.6% in Peter Malnati. Badley's at 4.5 or so, which I understand Badley. That's fine. He didn't rate out well, but he's good half the draw, good player in the wind. I understand that. I've got two players that I want to highlight for you all. You all can guess one, so I'm going to go to the other one first. Again, he didn't rate out well, but Russell Knox has been pretty darn good here. He's not good in the wind. Just putting it out there. He is not good in the wind, but despite that, he's been pretty good in 3 or 4 tries here at Port Royal. And it's generally pretty windy here at Port Royal. So there's something about this course that Russell Knox likes. I'm not saying that you need to use him, but if you are trying to find some price savings and trying to get greedy up top, maybe doing a double 10 Seamus Power and Mackenzie Hughes type lineup, you can maybe look at Russell Knox. Again, you're really playing him for the course history and the good half of the draw. But the mad scientist play of the week, you can probably guess, is Roger Sloan. 9th in my rankings. He's been pretty good here in multiple tries. The irons haven't been great, no, but pretty good putter in the fall. And really, really takes advantage of these mid-length par 4s. And he's pretty darn good on short courses in general. So Sloan is the mad scientist play of the week. And I'll be using him a little bit. All right. With that, let's start making some lineups. We're going to start with tiers contests, and then we'll move to our big GPPs and classic lineups. So for those who play tiers contests, goodness gracious. Tier 1, Seamus Power, Mackenzie Hughes, Matt McNeely. I'm going to go Seamus Power. Mackenzie Hughes I'm pretty confident Mackenzie Hughes as well. And this might be enough ownership where you gain a lot off of Seamus Power. But I will go Seamus Power in Tier 1. I think I can find some uniqueness elsewhere. But if you are worried about, duplicating a bunch of tiers lineups, Mackenzie Hughes is very solid in Tier 1. And I think he'll be more unique than you might think. Tier 2, Ben Griffin, Doug Gim, Patrick Rogers, Lucas Glover, and Sam Stevens. Notice how all 5 of these players have the bad half of the draw, so no advantage there on anybody, perhaps getting a choosing the best half of the draw. So you're just picking the best player here. It's probably Ben Griffin, but that's a whole lot of ownership. Like I said, I do have some concerns with Doug Gim. Not in love with Lucas Glover. Yeah, let's go Ben Griffin. We're going to have to really, really find some uniqueness elsewhere, which is some of the appeal to Mackenzie Hughes, especially because I don't like a lot in Tier 2. But I'll start Power and Griffin, and we're going to have to find some uniqueness. Tier 3, Justin Lauer, Matty Schmid, Andrew Putnam, Daniel Berger, and Johnny Vegas. Finding that uniqueness. We're going to go Andrew Putnam. Berger's probably fine. Justin Lauer's my number 1 player in the field, but bad half of the draw. Give me Andrew Putnam. Love Andrew Putnam this week. If he does not play well, it will be a very bad week for me. I'm going to be extremely overweight on Andrew Putnam and Ryo Satsune. But give me Putnam in Tier 3. Tier 4, Novak, Echeverria, Todd, Hubbard, Nick Taylor, and Bridgman. Much like Tier 2, all of Tier 4 has the bad half of the draw. So you're picking the player that you are most confident in. For me, that would probably be Jacob Bridgman, although he is extremely bad in a small sample size, but he's been extremely bad in the wind. So it actually might be Mark Hubbard. I'm not in love with it. It's between Hubbard and Bridgman for me in Tier 4. I'm actually going to change my mind. I am going to go Mark Hubbard in Tier 4. Try to squeeze out just a little bit more uniqueness, seemingly, off of the others. Tier 5, Kevin Yu, Smalley, Hoey, Grayson Sigg, Carson Young, Vince Whaley, Michael Kim. Yeah, Carson Young. I think I'm much more confident in Carson Young than I am in Rico Hoey this week. It's probably probably between those two, since they have the good half of the draw, can be Carson Young. And then finally, tier 6, Blair, Smotherman, Toasty, Lonto Griffin, Brandon Wu, Cameron Champ, and Kevin Chappell. I really don't like much here. Lonto Griffin might be interesting. I didn't talk about him at 7,000, but, you know, very good on these short par 4s, decent enough putter. Lonto Griffin might be interesting in tier 4, or tier 6. So, yeah. I'll go Lonto Griffin tier 6. So this tier's construction goes Seamus Power, Ben Griffin in tier 2, Andrew Putnam in tier 3. We'll go Mark Hubbard in tier 4, trying to squeeze just a little bit more uniqueness out. Otherwise, it's Jacob Bridgman. But Mark Hubbard tier 4. Tier 5 is Carson Young. Tier 6, Lonto Griffin. Okay. With that, let's move into classic lineups. Start building these big GPP lineups. The most chalky player, or the most projected owned player, is Ben Griffin. So we'll start there. And as I mentioned, going through the price board, our fellow contestants, at least at Fantasy National, really aren't coming down even into the low 7s. You got 8.5 from Ryan Moore, 8% on David Lipsky, but like Nick Hardy here at 7,600 is the lowest double-digit owned player. So if that's the case, our fellow contestants don't have a whole lot of wiggle room here. Low 8s on average. Now, what could be happening is that there's a wide discrepancy on who's like the 6th person or the bottom of players' lineups. That could be the case here. But if indeed we're trying to squeeze the most ownership into this, we're looking at Carson Young here, which is a shame because I really like Carson Young. Grayson Siggs getting a lot as well. Yeah, Daniel Berger. And then 82. No one at 82. Kevin Yu, Jacob Bridgman, Alex Smalley, Rico Hoey. Choose who you think there. I'll say Rico Hoey. This is close to 100% cumulative ownership. That's pretty darn high. This is probably one way that our fellow contestants are building their lineups. Going Griffin and then down to Berger and then just hammering the upper 7s. I could also see something to the effect of maybe a Ben Griffin, Matty Schmid. Well, it's kind of the same thing. Schmid or Berger, because now they're going to have to come down even further. But what does Berger look like in this? Yeah, okay, so this could work as well. You could do, or it seems like some of our fellow contestants might be doing like a Griffin, Schmid, Berger, and then probably coming down into the upper 7s for, again, a Hoey, a Sig, a Young. Go Grayson Sig. And then due to the fact that this low 7 ownership is so scattered, they're choosing 1 or 2 players in here. That might be another kind of shell that our fellow contestants seem to be going. If they're not using Ben Griffin and they're going Seamus Power, it makes it a little bit more difficult. I don't think they'll be able to go Daniel Berger. Instead, they're probably going to have to drop down, maybe do like a balanced +1 instead of a balanced -1. Do like Bridgman, Hoey, Sig. Yeah. Young. And Smalley. Like, almost a balanced +1. Could be in a way that our fellow contestants are going. But either way, you see all of the ownership is getting clumped into the low 8s and upper 7s. And that's why I'm, beyond the fact that most of these guys don't have a good tee time, this is kind of why I'm not building these lineups. Is because that's where all the ownership is going. So instead, how are we going to maneuver around that? Well, I'll try to build you a balanced lineup that can compete against that. In the 9Ks, it's Andrew Putnam. Like, you're going to start Andrew Putnam and then kind of go from there. Like, you could maybe go Berger. I'll mention Mark Hubbard. It's okay. I know he's got the bad half of the draw, but he's played well here. Certainly a pivot off of a lot of this other stuff in here. But this is why this kind of lineup is really, really hard. Like, and honestly, might have to go something like Putnam second, Hubbard. Like I said, I have a lot of concerns with Brendan Todd this week. Instead, like, choose whoever you would want up here. Maybe you're really high on Gim, Lauer. I guess I'll go Lauer. But you're still running into the same issue where you've got, in the upper 7s to fill out this lineup. It should be helped by the fact that you went Putnam and Hubbard, but for me, I would definitely use Carson Young in this, and then come on down to again a Hitsatsune, maybe a Nick Hardy, Wesley Bryan, probably fine. But that's the struggle with building these balanced lineups this week, is that's where all of the ownership is clumped. So instead, I'm building stars and scrubs. I'm not afraid to go down to Roger Sloan at all, considering he was 9th in my rankings. He's played well here, very unique, and this allows me to do a whole lot and avoid a whole lot of shock. I mean, I can take a Seamus Power. Andrew Putnam is helping get a lot of the leverage in the 9Ks. I can still be greedy and think about another 8 if I wanted to. But what I've been doing, I love Ryo Hitsatsune. I mentioned David Lipsky or Pearson Cootie. I really want to like Chesson Hadley. I know he's got the bad half of the draw. But, if you come off of Hadley, go to David Lipsky, this is Daniel Berger, who a lot of people seem to be on. Like, you don't have to get a whole lot of uniqueness here. You can still take a Power and a Berger and still be pretty fine in terms of total ownership. Because if you're willing to come down to the 6Ks, you're probably building a unique lineup this week. The other way you can go about this, if you're not comfortable going into the 6Ks, you come off of Power to go to Hughes, who I think is going to be just fine. It still involves Putnam, just because of his leverage in the 9Ks off of all of the other chalk, like Matty Schmid, Berger, Novak. He is the pivot in that area. And then, I would still go to Carson Young here, Ryo Hitsatsune, David Lipsky, Pearson Cootie. If we bottom this out, let's say Pearson Cootie this time. 8,100 is Jacob Bridgman. It's Kevin Yu. I know they don't have the good half of the draw, but you can take a chance on who you feel most comfortable with there. Like, Kevin Yu has played this course pretty well, and you have to realize that Port Royal's generally pretty windy, and Kevin Hughes pretty good in the wind. So like, there's another way I've been going about building these lineups. Coming off the Seamus Power chalk, Andrew Putnam is a focal point just because he's the pivot in that area. And then I really like a lot in the low sevens. Yes, I'll use my fair share of Carson Young, and he's getting quite a bit of attention, at least per Fantasy National. But again, Ryo Hitsatsune, David Lipsky, Pearson Coody. I'm cautioning you on Chesson Hadley. I love Chesson Hadley this week. It's just he's got the bad half of the draw, but I'm going to use him. I mean, coming on down, Lonto Griffin, even Scott Piercy, good in the wind. So those are the kinds of lineups that I've been building this week. In terms of poll question, the forecast push you toward or away from using certain players? Definitely is the overwhelming winner. I would say somewhat would be my answer. Like, yes, I am adjusting my usage of players like Justin Lauer, like Ben Griffin, like Chesson Hadley, because of the forecast and their tee time. But it's not like I'm completely avoiding them because of it. I'm still going to play those guys because I'm confident in them. So I'm going to say somewhat, kind of splitting hairs there, or depends on your definition. Maybe my answer technically falls into definitely, but it definitely has an effect on the players that I'm choosing. That's for sure. Be on the lookout for my betting card and my top player usage in the contests that I play. That's going to come out later this evening once I, insert my lineups into DraftKings and finalize them and all that stuff. But I want to thank P for jumping into chat, and thanks to everyone else out there who tunes in, watches, listens, supports the channel by liking the videos, commenting, and subscribing. I always appreciate it. Love what I do, taking a very in-depth look at golf statistics, giving you a statistician and data analyst view of what he sees, trying to help us all win a little bit of money in the process. We've only got 2 weeks to go, so we're going to try to end 2024 on an extremely high note. Yep. Thanks again, P. I always appreciate it. Thanks for jumping in the chat. For all the wagers you've made this week for the Bermuda Championship, for all the DFS contests you play this week for the Bermuda Championship, for this weekend and every weekend, may all your bets be profitable.